Yes.
All right, then I will call this meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. So the first thing that we do need to take care of as a matter of business is to approve the conducting of this meeting electronically. Do I have a motion to do so?
I'll do it. I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business for the council. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans, considering COVID-19 outbreak. Any rule conflicting with governor's executive meeting authority permitting electronic meetings be suspended.
And I second that motion.
Moved by Mark, seconded by Wendell. We're going to do a roll call. That roll call, do me a favor, guys, mute yourselves if you're not speaking at the moment. We're going to do a roll call vote. That roll call will also, that roll call vote will serve as our attendance record at the beginning of this meeting as well. Abigail, would you please?
He said that he could.
Elena Boyer.
Yes.
April Calvin.
Present.
Do you agree with the motion?
I do. Yes.
Ashley Oswald. Ryan Ellis.
Ryan Ellis, are you on?
I see him. We'll come back to him. Trina Frierson. Michelle Hall. Yes. Ryan Hassett. Dawn Diener.
Yes.
Chris Humphrey.
Yes.
Catherine Knowles.
Yes.
Ingrid McIntyre.
Yes.
Mark Overlock.
Yes.
Mary Catherine Rand.
Yes.
Beth Shin.
Yes.
Freddie O'Connell. Aaron Evans. Sandra Sepulveda.
I'm sorry, I just joined. I don't know what we're voting.
It's the motion to conduct the meeting virtually.
Yeah.
Bob Freeman. Paula Foster.
Yes.
Laura Bermudez.
Yes.
Tim Leith. Wendell Seagroves.
Yes.
Teresa Stills. Charlie Strobel. See, he's on. I'll come back. Tom Turner.
Yes.
Okay, let me go back to Ryan Ellis
Yes.
and Charlie Strobel.
Charlie, can you guys hear us? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us.
He's muted.
No. They look like they're having a little trouble. All right, well, at this point, you can mark Charlie as present because I can see him there. But I don't know what's going on with his audio. We'll have to come back to him later.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. We will move forward with this meeting. Thank you all again for taking your time to be here. It's again, crazy world that we're living in, that we continue to have to do things this way. It's difficult, but we're managing. So again, thanks for your patience. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do to help facilitate your joining, Charlie, or whatever. We're going to do a moment of silence. If you would all please make sure that you are muted for a little bit. And I'm going to read the names of the folks that we know that have passed away since last we met. And if anyone knows, I have 3 names on my list. If anyone knows of anyone else, you can please jump in and let me know what those are. All right. The names are Lonnie, Nina Freedom Pemberton, James Mercer, and Brian Weekly. There are 4. Does anyone know of anyone else? All right. We will take a moment of silence, please. All right. Thank you all very much. All right. On to, yes.
Paula, I'm here. Charlie, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
She's muted now. Tell her she's muted.
Yes.
You
Yes,
can
Charlie.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm here.
All right.
I'm sorry. I'm pathetic.
No, you're fine. Charlie, do you want to vote yes or no on conducting this meeting electronically?
Yes.
Thank you. So noted. All right. Okay. Looking at our agenda, first item on our agenda is an update on the recommendation letter that we sent to the mayor's office. So what happened after our last meeting when we approved that letter, the recommendation was made that we reach out directly to the mayor's office to speak to someone there prior to sending the letter to them. We did that. Mark Overlock, Bob Freeman, and I spoke to Mary Falls, who is one of the mayor's senior advisors. I honestly left that call feeling like there were many, many excuses for why we had not been involved in things that had happened prior to this, but no resolution whatsoever. Yeah, and to date, there has still been no resolution to anything, or to my knowledge, we have not been, no one from this body has been invited to participate in any discussions at the city level regarding anything that we had concerns about. So we got a lot of explanation as to why we had not been involved and what processes were, but we've not had any response whatsoever about becoming part of the planning process. So I'm not sure where we take it from here. I don't know what else we can do. I'm feeling a little defeated. So I will take recommendations from any of you if you have ideas about what we can do next. So I will open the floor to that discussion.
This is Mark. I think I might want one of us to reach back out to Mary Falls, because I thought one of the things she did say was she recognized that the mayor's office has not had staff presence, other than Judith Tackett, obviously, on the participating in these meetings. So when Christine Lalonde departed, we had that vacuum. And my sense was she was going to help us make sure we had someone from the mayor's office. It might be her to start participating or being present for our meetings. I think that would be a help for us all to keep the lines of communication open. So reach out to her again if you want. I deal with her just for the hospital authority. So that's one little baby step I'd suggest.
Hi, this is April. Mark, I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure. I guess we should reach out to see how, and maybe Judy would know, how closely Christine is still connected in that, because I think she's assumed some other duties.
So, April, I will tell you that Christine no longer works for the mayor's office. She works solely for MDHA, so she is not connected to the mayor's office. So that's not really a viable pathway for us. Mark, I hear what you're saying about that. However, and let me also be clear that Judy is not a connection between us and the mayor's office. Judy does not work for the mayor's office. She has not been invited to participate in meetings at that level. So I don't see that as a way for us to be connected to the mayor's office.
I just want to mention Renee is on here if she wants to say something as the executive director. She's my supervisor, and you know, so.
I think Mark's idea is a good one. I don't think we should end there, but I think we should do everything. Have all the efforts that we can make in all the channels that we can make. So by all means.
I'm willing to sleep on the steps of town hall. I'm not kidding. This is ridiculous.
It may need to be the squeaky wheel.
Yeah, more than happy to be the squeaky wheel. If anybody wants to throw me under the bus, I'm happy to live there.
Yeah.
Paula?
Yes.
Not to get too in the weeds about things, but is there anything that would be helpful for us to know as far as what they said why we weren't included? Just, is there something that we could use, kind of a strategy to be included?
That's a really good question, Mary Catherine. None of the things that Mark, did you hear anything in our call that would speak to Mary Catherine's question? I don't want to be the only one talking about this.
I think I had a little bit different from the discussion Mary Falls had with us. My sense was that she was suddenly thrust into trying to pull together a whole bunch of responses on behalf of the city. My sense was she also recognized that the Homelessness Planning Council was not involved and should have been. So I think she, I don't know, I can't speak for her, but my sense was she felt like she'd done everything she could reasonably do and had put together sort of the fairgrounds response and so forth very quickly. Got a lot of help from Office of Emergency Management, and just, you know, was really sort of under the gun. So my sense is I get the anger, and rage is never, in my sense, a good response. So that's why I'm thinking continue reaching out, and I'd love to hear if Renee has some thoughts, because she's the department head for Metro Social Service. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, Mary Catherine. I did have a different take, Paula. You know, and I'm a lobbyist, so I'm always trying to, you know, build relationships. And I'm not saying anybody here is not trying to build relationships. It's just that's my bias, and sometimes it's not appropriate. So maybe we do need to, you know, chain ourselves to the courthouse doors and get the response we want. That's not worked for me well in the past personally, but I don't want to push anybody any other way. So that's what my take was.
All right. So, and my feeling was quite the, I felt like we were met with anger. I felt like we were met with defensiveness, and a lot of excuses. So, and yes, I agree that there seemed to have been something set up that fell through somehow along the ways between figuring out who was responsible for what. But I will tell you that, you know, in the past 3 mayor administrations, we've had a direct liaison to the mayor's office that has been part of this planning council, and previously homeless commission, someone that worked with the commission directly from the mayor's office. And I will tell you that Christine's role was never fully defined. And we didn't know exactly what her role was with that and trying to be a liaison. And so it never really fully, well, it didn't have a lot of time, honestly, to work out. But, we don't have that right now. And, Mary said to us that, well, we'd have to find someone, and maybe it was her, but I don't see her on this call today. And I know that she was informed. So I don't know what to tell you about that. It doesn't feel to me like there is a genuine effort to try to bring us into the discussion. So, and I will also tell you that we are not the only board or commission or council that feels like they are not being utilized by the mayor's office. I've spoken with a couple of other community oversight board, the Human Relations Commission. They too feel like they have not been part of any kind of planning process that's happened when it comes to city organization and issues that affect specifically what we were all created to address. And again, that is my frustration. We are a citizen-led volunteer council that was brought together via ordinance to help the city plan around issues of homelessness, and yet we're not allowed to do that in any way. So again, that is my frustration. And I'm not sure. Yes, we can reach back out to Mary. Mary has followed up with our phone call and the letter with requests for information. She wanted to see our strategic plan. She wanted to see where we were with our strategic plan, but I've heard nothing more from that. And quite frankly, in some ways, I feel like that's a little irrelevant to where we're at the moment. But that's as far as we've gone. So I'm going to open it back up to, let's see, Dawn has had her little hand raised for a little while. Judy, hold on.
It's Renee trying to get muted, just to let you know. So Renee,
Sorry, what?
Renee cannot be heard by you. She cannot unmute herself. So we're trying to find out what technically is wrong there.
All right.
Just to let you know.
Okay. We'll come back to that then. All right, Dawn.
I was actually gonna ask Renee if there was any, insight that she could provide to us, number one. Number two, I was curious about where things stand with the fairgrounds. Do we know, how are things going there? What do we know at all about longer term planning? And three, I think, did we send the op-ed to the Tennessean, and have we had any response on whether or not they're gonna publish it?
So I don't necessarily have answers to your first two questions. I don't know what the plan for long-term for the fairgrounds is. It will have to close at some point, but I don't know what that looks like. And again, we've not been asked for any ideas around that. And your third question about the op-ed is that, yes, it was sent. I got an email back from David Plazas, who said they were going to run it at some point mid-month. However, we all know that the world has gone crazy in the last couple of weeks, so not sure what that's going to look like, but they received it and had planned to run it. So, all right. Okay. Anyone else have thoughts, ideas?
I just want to say, I know you didn't, the comment you just made about the world's gone crazy in the last few weeks. I just want to, I think I know what you mean, but I want to say and be intentional that the world has woken up in the last few weeks to some stuff that's really important, right? And so we've gone from tornado to pandemic to police brutality really quickly, and so I do think that there may be some timing issues in terms of the publication or bringing attention back to the issue of the fairgrounds, while police brutality and issues around policing are so much on the forefront, and and the injustice of that and the issues around Black Lives Matter. So just wanted to sort of publicly say that.
Dawn, thank you very much for saying that, because you're absolutely correct. And that's exactly what I meant. Things are happening, and it's so numerous, it's overwhelming. So, but yes, that is that is an issue. And timing is, you just can't control it. So one of the things that, I would think we need to recognize is that, while things may be chaotic, while things may be unmanageable in some ways, we still have a responsibility to make sure that we are pushing the issue of homelessness and awareness around that. We have, anyway, but thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that. So where do we go from here?
Until we hear from Renee.
Yes, we can try.
Or maybe she can call on. I don't know, Wesley.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach out to her now. Do any of you happen to have a phone number that I will be able to call her at?
Judy, can you help Wesley reach out to Renee to see if we can get her on the phone, maybe?
Yes, I just talked to her. Wesley, we can email you her phone number.
All right, well, let's put a pin in that. We can come back to it when Renee is able to help us. All right, so the next item on the agenda is Metro Homeless Impact Division and MDHA announcements. I assume that that's Judy or Susie.
I'm going to jump in real quickly. And then give it over to Susie. So one of the things I wanted to start with, something that Paula already mentioned, that the strategic plan update is requested is the strategic plan, which I sent out, and then an update with it, which I sent. I made the update, worked with the committees, and then added it to it, and I sent it to Renee to forward, and also to Paula, and I'm happy to forward it to everybody after this. So that should be on its way to the mayor's office. With that, I wanted to mention the committees are starting to meet again. People want to work, people want to get things done. We also need to look at, and I recommend that to the planning council, to really look at when in-person meetings become viable again, how you want to deal with that. It's really complicated to do virtual meetings with so many committees. There is a lot of confusion. We are confusing ITS. It's just the votes have to be repeated once we're back in person. To let you know, we're doing the best we can. There are hiccups right and left with this. So it would be easier to just give us the go ahead, see what we need to do in phase 2, up to 25 people can gather in one location. We've done a quick survey asking people if they wanted to meet in person, and they were just not ready in general, from the committees and also from you guys. We're just not ready yet to meet in person. So we're going to do our best to continue, but at one point we need to think about, we can't run all the committees virtually. It's just too much. It's a lot of work. Right now, Data Committee is starting to meet. Equity and Diversity Committee is setting up its first meeting this month. Governance Charter Committee is looking at, they need to do updates soon. The Nominations Committee, I think they have scheduled something, and we have the Extreme Weather Committee that's going to be a separate line item to report out. One of the things I really want to start, and I have worked with my team to come up with certain sets of data that we can do reporting out at each of these meetings, including what you had asked for, monthly housing numbers. I will send those out. We have enough now, I think, through coordinated entry in HMAS to give you a pattern and look at that. And then one of the things I wanted to really update you on is the encampment outreach efforts. We have new efforts going on mental health and health service delivery in encampments. The Salvation Army, and you had heard from them already, has been activated and is a lead in the state and also in Nashville to coordinate for encampment coordination. There's a food delivery going on, but now the newest effort is going to be around mental health. We have, yesterday I held a meeting with outreach providers, and we're hearing a whole lot the same issue, and you probably heard that. Encampments, people are not doing well. Mental health is really a big issue. People are off medications. Some people are self-medicating with more drugs. There is more violence. It's just a very tense situation. The mental health cooperative has been activated and will put, actually this week is the first time they're going out with 3 teams, special teams that are focusing on the larger encampments. The main focus is, and we had these collaborations with the Salvation Army Mental Health Co-op and Neighborhood Health on Jefferson Street Bridge Encampment, Old Tent City, and then the Charlotte Pike Bojangles Encampment, and also looking at Church Street Park. I haven't been by there, but I'm hearing there's a lot of things going on there as well, and people need help. We do have, of course, way more encampments than that, and food box deliveries are going out to about 75 locations, which just, and when I'm saying that, it's some are really small encampments. But one of the things I'm really hope will make a difference is those teams of 3 mental health providers that are going to go out and focus on certain encampments, build the relationships, have an outreach worker designated to those teams. Neighborhood Health is also going to dig out grants to improve transportation. That is, they can and do already work with bringing in medication, doing some telehealth and reaching out to the encampments, but they cannot, for example, they cannot deliver controlled substances. So they have a plan in place by the end of June, early July, where they can safely transport people to pharmacies, not just to testing, but also to pharmacies and some other appointments where they cannot get to. So they're also coordinating with Mental Health Co-op and others to make sure that if somebody is on a medical regimen, that the treatments are kind of coordinated and it's not, 2 different organizations doing the same things with people. So I'm happy to see that progress around mental health and health, and wanted to share that with you. I do have, if any of you want more information, let me know. I took really good, hopefully good notes from yesterday's meeting with update from all the organizations. So if you want to know that, just email me and I share those notes with you. And that's it for me. We will later talk about the Extreme Weather Committee. And by the way, on that one, I do have Kathy Jennings on the call, and I will call on her to report out from the committee. Susie, I'm going to hand it over, unless there are questions for me.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can hear you. Can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Morning, folks. The RFP for the THDA $50,000 supplemental funding for COVID efforts across the state. We received $50,000 from THDA. I think they will have awarded that since our last meeting. That is going to be used in Nashville for to supplement testing at the encampments. And so that's, we're embarking on that. The RFP has been sent out to 7 or 8 local health agencies, and the due date for those RFPs or applications is June 26th. That can be used actually for retro expenses, but and go through October 31st. It's not a whole lot of money, but it's an exciting opportunity to inject some more testing and some assessments in terms of general health, I think, for those folks who are living in camps. In terms of the Continuum of Care NOFA, there is no news from HUD. They are really honing in on all of the COVID activities, and are just each week there is a meeting and a national call, and there's no update on the COC NOFA. But if that ever gets issued, we'll certainly let you all know. had a virtual meeting on rental assistance needs and as we face the eviction moratoria lifting. That was interesting, and Kay Bowers, who is doing some facilitation for that effort, is getting notes together. I'd be glad to send that out to you all. And then the big news is the almost $5 million the city is going to get via the Emergency Solutions Grant COVID second installment. That's a whopping amount of money, and it's exciting news, but it also will necessitate close coordination with a lot of local efforts and identifying stakeholders to be a part of the strategic employment of that money. So we'll get a whole lot of more information about that out to you all. And if you want to suggest stakeholders to be involved in those services, please do let me know.
Susie, can you talk a little bit more about the ESG funds and how those are used and who makes decisions about that funding and the funding priorities? Can you give us a brief? Because we don't really have a lot to do with the ESG funding as a body, which I'm not sure why, but I'm not sure everyone knows what that is and who receives those funds and what are they used for in general. And yeah, just briefly.
And I can send a little bit more information out to you all that is more detailed, but they are typically used for emergency shelter expenses, for rapid rehousing costs, outreach is part of it, supportive services can be part of it, prevention efforts can be funded through Emergency Solutions Grant funds. And in terms of the key activities that, and identifying sort of how that money gets used, the funding actually goes to the city, gets administered by MDHA. And we're going to have to make some fairly quick decisions about priority activities using that money. And I think that the Planning Council can be and should be a part of that. We did identify some key needs out there when we were looking at the COVID money coming down the pike several months ago. We surveyed probably about 20 local agencies and probably heard back from about 15 of them in terms of key needs. And we'll probably be using some of that feedback. But, you know, as things have changed over the last 2.5 months, there may be some other needs identified. We do hope to send out a brief survey to the community to see if they can provide feedback about the major needs that they see out there. And again, we do want to begin to identify, probably like we're working on a list today and in the days to come of those stakeholders who do need to be a part of that conversation. And it's key also to avoid duplication with some of the other CARES funds that are coming, for example, to Metro Action Commission via the CSBG pipeline from DHS, and just make sure that we're coordinating those various funding streams to be as effective as possible. But the key activities under ESG, I can send a list of those out to everyone and additional details. But I think the best thing that the Planning Council members can do at this point is begin to recommend stakeholders that need to be a part of that conversation.
Thank you, Susie. I appreciate that. That is helpful.
Sure.
Betsy, you have a question?
Yeah, I wonder whether in addition to recommending people to be at the table, we should, as a planning council, recommend some of the use of that funds. And I'm not really good, and Susie, you're a whole lot better than I am at what pots of money can be used where, but can we recommend as forcefully as we can that money be used to house people and perhaps as a bridge until people can come to the top of an MDHA list for vouchers that would take over the rent in whatever place that we can get people into now. So can we basically recommend that that money be used to house as many people as possible with permanence down the road?
On that note, this is Judy. On that note, that's exactly what HUD actually recommends. I will dig up one of the documents that HUD's technical assistance has sent me and share it with you. And they looked at COVID funds and CARES dollars, and pretty much they recommend that as much as possible for emergency dollars from FEMA, those type of dollars should be used for emergency assistance and emergency shelter, and ESG, ESG Emergency Solution Grant, while it can be widely used, just use it for rapid rehousing, get people out of those emergency situations and emergency shelters, and really use it to focus on the getting them into permanent housing and those permanent settings with the supports.
Could I step in and actually make a resolution that the Planning Council specifically resolve to send that communication to the mayor's office? I feel like, again, if we're not going to get a response to previous communication, I think it's important that we document the recommendations that are critical to the role we have. So I think I'd basically like to move that we take Beth's commentary on this and put it in the form of a resolution that recommends that to the mayor's office.
I second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion about this?
This is Mark. I just have a question. So I didn't realize Mary Falls had asked us for our strategic plan and so forth. I'm gathering we already sent that to her.
Yes, we did, along with the update of where we are in the process of working toward the goals that are there.
I need to check on the updates if she has those yet, but yes, they're on the way.
This is Mary. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary.
Thank you.
Very
okay,
good.
I was never given notice of the meeting, so I'm thankful that one of the members texted me. And I did get the strategic plan, and I asked, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, for where they are on progress, and haven't gotten any answers for that. And I actually sent 2 requests for that, please.
I think we're really not talking about the strategic plan right now, but we're talking.
And I apologize because I just logged in, and the conversation was just in the last few minutes just about the strategic plan.
All right, so
can you all hear me? Good morning. Hello.
Yes.
Hey, it's Renee Pratt. Can I just make a brief comment?
Yeah, one second, Renee. Yeah, so Mary asked for the update on the strategic plan. I got that email on June 5th, which was just last week. And I do know that Judy has sent that to Renee and asked Renee to send that on to Mary. So that's where we are with that, Mary. Go ahead, Renee.
Well, you all were asking earlier, and I'm so glad Mary joined the call about the response to the issues around the fairgrounds. So instead of me speaking for Mary, and I believe you and I had a call, Paula, as well. And let me apologize, because I think the intent of the call, and maybe I wasn't clear, was to follow up with any additional questions or concerns you might have based on the information Mary had already shared with the 3 of you when you all met. And also, she had responded in some emails, and I think we talked about that, Paula, about, what has been responded to, and if there was anything else that you need responses to. I asked that you give me a call back and let me know so we can, wrap this up, and I never received a call. So with that, I asked Mary to respond to the questions you have.
So Renee, let me respond to that. Yes, you called me and gave me an update on what happened and how the fairgrounds came into being and what that process was, I didn't have any other questions to ask about that. And frankly, the giving us information about what happened is not what we were asking for. We were asking for the ability to become part of the planning process. So that has not been responded to in any email and any communication so far. So, Mary, if you'd like to address any of that, please feel free.
Renee, I'll let you, since you and I talked about this, I'll let you address that as a department head, how emergency response happens.
Sure. The emergency response, the Office of Emergency Management is responsible for the city's emergencies when they're called out, when it's a catastrophe around a tornado or opening the shelter or any of that. OEM leads that effort along with fire and police. The way it is set up, there's a report called the SIMP report, and I'm sorry, I don't know what that acronym stands for, but it is a policy procedure on how emergencies are to roll out and who's responsible for doing what. And that information includes tiers. And those tiers are metro departments that are called out at various times based on what the need is. So the first tier, of course, is police and fire. So if there's an emergency, they're automatically called out. And the people that come to what is known as the war room at the Office of Emergency Management are called there and identified by department heads to represent the department at that location in making decisions. Very rarely is it, or from my experience, and this is from the 2010 flood and throughout, they've never called in additional people to ask, how should we do this? What should we do? Representatives are there from all departments, and they normally know how to carry out their processes and procedures. So I don't think it was intentional at all that this commission was looked over. I just think we were working the process. There is no, there's really no guide to really cover how we address COVID-19. So many of those decisions, and I wasn't involved in those decisions on the first level because social services doesn't go out until the second tier. But we became involved because we run the winter overflow shelter. And my staff was familiar with running a shelter, and OEM asked, could we possibly help them with that effort around staffing? So that's how roles pretty much roll out when emergencies occur in the city. And with the COVID, emergencies were decisions are being made every 10 minutes. They change. So, we intentionally don't want to put out any bad information.
Please.
Somebody needs to mute themselves who's not talking right now. We have two hands that are up, Ingrid and then Dawn.
Renee, thank you for jumping on the call. I really appreciate it. And so we asked for that about 2 months ago, but what we really need to know now is what is next? Why do we not have representation? What happens when the fairgrounds close? And who is making those decisions? Because similar to this phone conversation, and again, I'm not, whatever, I am who I am, you know me. We're asking for where the buck stops. And we've been asking that for months and nobody can seem to give us an answer. And so we need to know not how 2 or 3 months ago things rolled out. They did not roll out well. They did not roll out with any sort of recommendation from this board. And so we need to know how we are involved now, and next steps are for the fairgrounds, and really who's making those decisions. Thank you.
Renee or Mary, either one of you can answer that question, please.
Yeah, please. Let her rip, girls.
I think I don't make the decisions at that level. It's OEM that is running the actual shelter. We do not at this point have an anticipated close date that I'm aware of. There's still issues around social distancing at the mission, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of and that their folks, we're getting them what they need to make sure that they're not overcrowded there. So I don't have any updated information on the possibility of next steps in terms of it closing or what the next phase looks like. Jay,
about the mission, you cow.
Sean Muldoon, somehow you're off mute and inappropriately speaking. So I really like you to make sure that you are muted. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think what needs to occur at this point is Jay's survey, and I need to both be on this call. And I think also I shared with Judy Tackett, there's some ways that we can improve as a council as it relates to what type of communication plan we probably need to develop as it relates to internal and external information. But, and again, yeah, I'm not going to be called a cow on this call, so maybe I just need to refrain from making any more comments. So.
Okay. No, Renee, stop. Everyone stop right now. Here's the thing. Someone was unmuted who is not part of this council, who made a comment that it was wholly inappropriate. I apologize for that. Wesley Smith, can you make sure that people who are not supposed to be on this call and unmuted are totally muted, please? All right. Renee, I'm so sorry. That did not come from a planning council member. I want you to be very clear on that.
All right. Well, thank you. So again,
so sorry. I apologize.
That's fine. As a representative, that sits on this council, let me apologize again that we haven't had an opportunity to come together and actually have an open meeting around the fairgrounds and including you in any efforts that we might have. The Homeless Impact Division works with us as well around shelter. There's some things that Judy does with the hospitals and with the health department around the shelter as well. So I think we can do a better job of reporting out to you on what is happening at the shelter. But again, if I'm not one of those decision makers, I think we need to have Jay at the table again and ask those specific questions that you have about next steps and direction we're moving in.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, that you're not part of the decision-making process either, which is part of what our frustration has been. Dawn, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, what I wanted to, I guess, ask or sort of articulate was, first of all, I appreciate both Mary and Renee calling in for this. And I guess my focus is to the future. And so my question is, who do we need to ask about becoming part of the conversation going forward? And is that Jay Surveys? Because if it is, he attended, he participated in one of the calls that the COVID task force of the Planning Council put together. When I toured the fairground shelter, he was there and answered questions and, invited our input and asked for our help. And so I guess I am much more focused at this point on where are we going from this point forward, and how can the Planning Council get at the table to offer the expertise that we have to doing as well as we can for Nashville's population of people who don't have houses. What can you give us any insight into who we need to ask? Can we get at the table?
Well, I think we just need to do it. I mean, I don't mind being that person. I work very closely with Jay around the shelter. So I don't mind helping with that process or ensuring that we have a place at the table. Mr. Survey definitely wants our help. He encouraged you all and everyone who wants to visit the fairgrounds and come out and look at the way it's set up and how organized it is. We've been very fortunate that we haven't had major outbreaks. So there's some good things happening there. And I think we need to definitely include Jay in the conversation and just bring him in. And he did ask for help and ask for suggestions on that last call that we had with him. So for next steps, I think we need to reach out to him and ask him to come speak to this body about next steps and what he's envisioning.
I want to know what we need to do to get at his table, not what we need to do to get him back to see us. What do we need to do to get at his table?
On the table right now that talks about kindergarten was supposed to be discussed.
I'm so sorry, Freddie. You're absolutely right. Let's can we deal with that particular resolution first? Is there any more discussion around that? You might want to restate what it was for me, Freddie, so that we can do that and then get back to what we were just discussing.
Yeah, and I apologize. I to effectively paraphrase what Beth was suggesting, but the bottom line that we should use this funding, as much of this funding as possible, to provide as much housing as possible with a pathway for making as much of a housing opportunity permanent as possible. That's the thesis of it. Judy, that is actually consistent with the HUD recommendation. I just want to capture that in the resolution and make it a formal recommendation.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Abigail, Michelle Hall. You're on mute, Michelle. There you go.
Freddie was going in and out on that. Can you just restate what he said? I can hear you loud and clear. He was very shaky for me.
So the motion is to send a resolution to the mayor's office to make sure that we are using the ESG funds. I believe Susie said there was a good significant amount of money coming in. I'm sorry?
CARES funds.
And CARES funds to focus on getting people into housing with a pathway toward permanent housing as we move forward through this and utilizing those dollars specifically for that. Is that a good paraphrase, Beth?
Yeah, we'd like to use as many of those dollars as possible to help our on-house neighbors get into housing and with a path to permanent housing.
All right, great. So if there's no more discussion, Charlie, did you have a discussion point? Charlie, we can't hear you, hon. All right, Charlie, you have to get back to us, Charlie. I'm not sure what's going on with your audio, but this is the problem with electronic meetings when electronics don't work. Do we want to call for the vote or do we want to wait for Charlie? Well, there's Charlie. That's it.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay. Well, I've been trying to get a comment in, and I'm sorry to be such a klutz about computers, but I've been listening to us, and what we were talking about, I think ultimately comes back to how we were formed. I can remember meetings several years ago where we went on and on and on to create what we thought was a great way to communicate, realizing that there's the executive part of government and then there's the advisory group, and we're part of that. But what has happened is it seems like we've got to the point today of asking a fundamental question. Are we needed? Are we needed by the mayor, by the executive branch of government? We hope we are needed, but we're looking for definition of that. And we've got all kinds of authorities that we're dealing with. Metro Social Services, Judy's office, the mayor's office, the health department. All of those are competing, in our minds, competing authorities. And I think this resolution just goes on to say the same thing we are all asking, are we needed? I haven't gotten the answer that we are.
Thank you, Charlie. That is well said. So I have before we do this, we have a couple of other hands that look like they're up. Treva Gilligan, did you want to make a comment about any of this? Is Treva still on? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Treva.
I just wanted to let the council know that as part of the ESG funding that's coming in, the next tranche, we will be receiving technical assistance from HUD. And one of the focus of that technical assistance is to try to coordinate with everybody and make sure that as many of those dollars as possible go to housing. So, in fact, we had phone conversations yesterday afternoon, and I think they're in the process of trying to bring all the parties together, and including representatives from Metro, the mayor's office, because obviously they have to sign off on the use of these funds. So that's something that's in the works that I think is very positive. So, and the Planning Council should be a part of that.
Thank you, Treva. Please let us know when that group comes together and who's a part of it. And if there's someone from this body that can be part of that, we would really appreciate that.
Okay, sure will.
All right. So is there any further discussion about this resolution about using the funds that are coming through the CARES Act and through ESG? No. All right. Let's do a roll call vote then, please. Abigail, would you do that for us?
Yes. Okay. Elena Boyer?
Yes.
April Calvin? Beth Shin?
Yes.
Knowles?
Yes.
Charlie Strobel?
Yes.
John Diener? Freddie O'Connell? Ingrid McIntyre? Laura Bermudez?
Yes.
Mark Overlock?
Yes.
Mary Catherine Rand?
Yes.
Michelle Hall?
Yes.
Norman Humber?
Yes.
Paula Foster?
Yes.
Ryan Ellis?
Yes.
Sandra Sepulveda?
Yes.
Tom Turner?
Yes.
And Wendell Seagroves?
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe that is everyone, and everyone voted yes, so there is no opposition. All right. Back to what we were discussing in terms of figuring out how to have a presence at the planning table. So
Mary Falls can't get unmuted, Paula, just FYI.
say that again.
Mary Falls can't get unmuted.
Okay. Wesley, can you try to figure out how to get Mary unmuted again, please?
Yes, I'll try to get in touch with her and give her assistance.
Okay. Mary, if you can hear us when you're unmuted, please let us know. So I believe, again, the question was, not necessarily how to get people to come give us updates and information, but how can we be part of the planning process? I mean, those are two very different things. I appreciate very much all the things that have happened. I appreciate specifically the work of Metro Social Services in running the shelter at the fairgrounds. And I do believe that they've done an extraordinary job with what they've been given. And I do not ever want to minimize that. But but there has to be somewhere that we go from here, and it doesn't feel like there's any plan for that. And if there is, we don't know what it is, nor do we know who's making that plan. And that is our point. You know, we are a planning council, and therefore we would like to know who's making the plans, who's in charge of the plans, and how do we have a voice in what those plans are. You know, it very well could be that we sit down to the table and find out what everyone is thinking and agree with it completely. It's not necessarily that we want to come in and change everything. We want to be part of the process to ensure that we are following best practice guidelines, that we are moving forward, that we're using the funds that are coming into this city appropriately, and that we have some voice in making sure that that happens. That is our request, because we have experts around this table that would be invaluable in making those decisions and moving things in that direction. Judy, you have your hand up.
I just, so I've been very quiet. I just wanted to give you a quick history, and I really want to look forward how we improve things and not go back and point fingers, but I think you need to know that it's not a lack of my effort to try to ask for improved communication. I actually took the time and went through my emails. I asked for made recommendations and asked for improved communication within Metro and outside with the Planning Council on March 13, March 15, April 3, April 6, April 17, April 29, May 4, and May 6. And I do have the backup to show that I did that. And I do have some suggestions, but I really want to take and ask you to give me that leeway to discuss this within Metro first, and just follow up on that on my end before I come back and give you what some of the suggestions I had for this improved communication. But I do think it's part of my role to help with that, and I just need to be. I'm going to ask moving forward how I can be enabled and really be better at that as well.
Okay, Judy, thank you. So at this point, we will ask again for the ability to be part of a planning conversation around moving forward. Okay.
And may I say something again?
Yes, Charlie.
Asking that is really back to the question which I'm stressing, is that we believe that we have something to contribute to make this a better city as it responds to the homeless. Are we needed? I'm not sure. That's the understanding of the entire governmental process, and we're new, and we haven't proved our stripes to the degree that people would look at us as a voice. We're not a voice, and I think that's an obvious conclusion when you think about how many times we're being called upon to respond and to help.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. Michelle and Treva still have their little hands up, and so does Judith. Did you guys say what you needed to say, or did you want to say again?
I just can't figure out how to put my hand down. I'm sorry.
No worries, Michelle. Just want to make sure I wasn't leaving you out. All right. I think at this point there is one request that I do have that may need to come to the next meeting. There was, one second, Mark, and I'll get right back to you, okay? There was plans in the works last year for a building to be built that had housing, permanent supportive housing units, as well as office space and other things. We need an update from someone about what's happening there and what that looks like and where the process is and what a timeline might be for that. We haven't had any update on that since the change in administration, and I would love for that to happen. Maybe Judy and Susie can reach out to the appropriate people and have them come and give us an update at the next meeting, please. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the extreme weather committee update.
Okay, can you hear me?
Is this Kathy?
Yes, this is Kathy.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Would you give us an update on your committee?
I sure can. First of all, I wanted to preface that by saying I appreciate, you all allowing me to speak at your meeting. I also appreciate all the work and time that you guys volunteer to put into this. And I really appreciate the motion you just passed about housing first and the pathway to that housing. So that being said, our committee met June 4th, and our first recommendation was to turn the Extreme Weather Committee into a shelter committee that keeps the focus on extreme weather as a priority, but considers other extreme conditions and includes other shelter options in the committee's discussion, research, and recommendations to the HPC. And the rationale behind that is right now the Extreme Weather Committee kicks in and plans for historically anywhere between 0 and 30 days a year. And especially with COVID, that has become quite complicated and also not productive. I mean, it's a very expensive proposition for these types of shelters to kick up, and it is important because people do die on the streets when the temperature gets below 28 degrees, but they also die on the streets when the temperature is 34 degrees or when the temperature is 56 degrees. And so we understand that our priority is definitely to make recommendations around that extreme weather, but in that process, we would like to become part of this pathway to housing that you all are talking about. I mean, typically housing has that pathway where there is a stay in a temporary transitional type housing or shelter before you move on. And so we're not looking to substitute a shelter for this housing first, but it would be, we'd like to be your boots on the ground. We'd like to do the research. We'd like to come up with some alternative types of shelter options for the city to use all year round and in the extreme weather. And to do that research for you all so we can make some recommendations in that regard. Did I explain myself well? Or especially with all this money coming through. I mean, there are some shelter type options that could be set up for COVID that could then also be more of a permanent type regional shelters. So, but that's, I'm moving down the road there. But that was our first recommendation to the Planning Council. I'm not sure if you all have to vote on that, or, I mean, I'll turn that back over to Paula or Judy.
Okay, so my first question would be, I guess, to Susie or Judy, if you know this off the top of your head, because you'd think that I would, but I don't remember. Is the Extreme Weather Committee a charter required committee, or is it an ad hoc committee?
It's an ad hoc.
So it's not listed in the charter as a standing committee? No. Okay, well then we can change the name if we want to. Any thoughts?
To applaud. Bravo.
Bravo. Thank you. All right. Well, let's go through the rest of the report, and then we will come back and someone can move to make that name change, because I think it's great. And you're right. You're talking about extreme weather. You have been talking primarily about sheltering, so why not make it a shelter committee that does a more broad look at how to make sure that folks are sheltered when they need to be. Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, and then we did have a second recommendation, and I'm going to give you a little bit of the rationale previous to me giving you the recommendation. When we were discussing, we met in March before all the shutdown and the shelter in place, and we had to have our extreme weather, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judith, to the Metro Council by the end of May. And
one of the things I need to correct there, because that's really important. There is an ordinance that requested that Metro Social Services submit an extreme weather approach for just Metro, what Metro is doing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And and again, I'm the new chairman to this committee, but as I understand it, there was a talk at some point of having an RFP, and it didn't materialize, and so we're talking about doing that again. But I mean, I visited the DCSO and felt that Metro Social Services was doing a great job. I understand it can also be an expensive facility, and so the recommendation was made for the HPC to urge Metro to pursue other location options to the DCSO facility as a cold weather overflow shelter. And that is probably a continuation of the conversation that happened last year. And it's also going to be complicated if there is a second wave of COVID. It may be hard to socially distance in that facility. And that's probably something Metro Social Services is already looking at in conjunction with the fairgrounds. But we as a committee would like for the Homeless Planning Council to urge Metro to pursue other location options.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for that. I have a question for Renee, if she is still able to answer. I know that the Metro's budget is still being debated at the moment. Is there a request in Metro Social Services budget to cover the expenses for extreme weather sheltering over the winter?
We requested it and it was not recommended.
Not recommended by whom?
By the mayor's office in his submission to the councils for the budget.
So you asked for money to run overflow shelters in the winter during that need, but the mayor's office budget didn't have that in it.
Yes, it wasn't funded, but let me be clear. In the past few years, and when we took it over, if we've run over in that line item budget, we cover it in other places if we have extra funding to cover it in our budget, or that hasn't been a problem at all. So I don't foresee we run over. It just depends. It's hard to predict from winter to winter. So, but that hasn't been an issue for us to be able to cover the funding for the shelter, for the winter shelter.
Well, I appreciate that, Renee, but it feels very, I don't even know what the word is about how it feels to know you're going to need money to do something, yet not put that in the budget. So yeah.
Well, we can only, forecast from the, you understand, from the previous year. So again, it's hard to pin down the exact amount, but yeah, generally it does run over budget.
All right, well.
Am I allowed to speak? For some reason, this is Kathy again.
Yes, Kathy.
For some reason, and I don't have the exact line item name, I thought there was $51,000 in the budget. And I think that's what.
There's $51,000 in my budget, in social services budget for the overflow shelter, and there's $10,000 in the homeless impact division budget for the shelter as well.
Okay, and just so you all know, the DCSO last year was, I think it was $159,000 for the nights that they had. So I mean, I don't know if that's pertinent to what we talked about, but anyway, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. So we currently have two items from this committee. One is to rename the committee, the extend other committee to a shelter committee. The second would be to recommend to the mayor's office or to whomever makes the decision, since we don't know who makes these decisions, that we pursue other locations other than the DCSO facility as a cold weather shelter.
I have a question real quick.
Yes, Wendell.
I've been a part of the extreme weather ad hoc committee for several years now. Why wasn't I a part of it this year, or even an invitation for it?
I don't know. Susie, do we know? Do we have a list of committee members and what happened there? I honestly, Wendell, I don't remember why you wouldn't have been on that.
I've got a list that I can look at, and I don't know why that would have happened, Wendell.
Sign up for whatever committee.
I was a part of that.
I think when the committees were reassigned earlier this year, voted on, Wendell, you were moved off of that committee, and I believe you may be on some different committees. So I'll make sure to send you the ones that you are assigned to.
Okay, I would appreciate
It's
that.
important. Yeah, it's
Real
important
to me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. So, and Wendell, I will tell you that the reappointments to committees will happen, hopefully next month. So if you want to be back on that committee, please let us know. And we'll make sure that that happens. All right. So I would need in form of a motion, the first piece that Kathy has suggested that we rename this Extreme Weather Committee to the Shelter Committee. Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion. This is Ingrid, and I'll make a motion that the emergency, whatever it used to be called, be renamed the Shelter Committee. I think that's a great idea.
Do I have a second?
Wasn't part of that also a change in mission to focus on shelter and housing?
Yes, but that should actually be part of the motion. So the motion would be to turn the Extreme Weather Committee into a shelter committee that keeps the focus on extreme weather as a priority, considers other extreme conditions, and includes other shelter options in the committee's discussion, research, and recommendations to the Homelessness Planning Council. So do we have a second?
Second.
Second that.
Second by Beth Shen. So moved by Ingrid, second by Beth Shen. Is there any further discussion about renaming this committee? Mark, do you have your hand up?
Hello?
I just,
Hold on, Charlie.
it's not about this, just Mary Falls had feedback about CARES Act money, and she's now on the public line. So at some point, if Wesley Smith would unmute her, she can respond. Nothing to do with this motion.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We'll come back to that in a minute. Anything else about this motion? Charlie, do you have something?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, Charlie.
Okay. I was a part of the committee when it was formed in the beginning, and it was a loose affiliation. People just came to the meeting not as formally being appointed. And we talked about the differences of those different shelters. And what's important, I think, for the mission to be involved is that they do not have any interest in being told how to run the shelter when they feel they have expertise to do that. So there's communication issues that we're going to have to deal with, but I think it's an important one, and Wendell has signed on, so I'm encouraged that we're going to be able to give it more definition and expand those shelters around the city.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. All right. So with that, Abigail, would you call the vote?
Elena Boyer. April Calvin.
Yes.
Knowles.
Yes.
Strobel. Sorry, Charlie, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Don Diener.
Yes.
Freddie O'Connell.
Yes.
Ingrid McIntyre.
Yes.
Laura Bermudez.
Yes.
Mark Overlock.
Yes.
Mary Catherine Rand.
Yes.
Oh, I couldn't hear you, Mary Catherine. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Michelle Hall.
Yes.
Norman Humber.
Yes.
Paula Foster.
Yes.
Ryan Ellis.
Yes.
Sandra Sepulveda.
Yes.
And Wendell Seagroves.
And I need to mention this. I was just informed that our help didn't show up today, so I have to bow out to go help get the food ready to feed today. So I've got to say goodbye, guys.
All right, Wendell, thank you very much for being part of it. We still have a quorum, I believe, so we're fine.
Okay. I'm yes on this. I'm voting yes on this too, though.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we need to vote on recommending the Metro pursue other DC, options other than DCOS, SO? Or is that something we just will continue to work toward? Anybody's thoughts on that? Does it need to be a formal resolution to the mayor's office, or do we just need to? Michelle? No, never mind. Okay, no, Michelle. Anybody else?
I mean,
Well,
I think it should be on the record, kind of like the other things that we've talked about. At this point, I don't trust that anybody is going to take any of our recommendations that aren't written down, I guess, or aren't hard copy.
Okay.
And Paula, this is Kathy again. Just for the record, our recommendation was that you urge Metro to pursue other location options. So it wasn't necessarily that you do a formal resolution.
Okay. Thoughts around that, folks? In the interest of time, I think I don't want to actually necessarily go through a voting process at this point. I think we all are on the same page, knowing that we want them to do something other than that, and we will continue to work in that direction. So I really want to get to the nominating committee because I think this is really important, and we're running short on time. So Ingrid, you want to give us an update on nominating committee? That's you, right? Or is that Judy? Mute. Unmute.
Ingrid, and you're muted. Ingrid.
There you go.
Sorry, I was up in my paperwork and it took me a minute to get back there. Okay. Yes, we had a meeting on, I don't know what day we had a meeting. Sorry, this is not very good of me. June 4th. And we have 5 elected by the membership, 5 people that need to be elected by the COC membership, 2 with lived experience, and the others appointed by the mayor, or a third person appointed by the mayor. And we have come up with a list of folks that we think fill some needs in our COC in terms of diversity, in terms of representation, in terms of expertise. And we sort of need to make a decision in this. Need to sort of ask for legal's help on this, and Susie, jump in anytime. There have been other COCs that did vote virtually. I don't know if that's something that we can do, but our voting month is normally July. So that's something that we just need to think about how we're going to, as we'll roll off and we need new. Could we just extend that for a month, or do we want to try to do virtual voting?
That's a good question. And actually our voting should be taking place in June, but that's a whole nother but yeah, that's a whole, yeah.
Right, sorry, I meant in place by July. Yeah. So we do have a ballot that we're working on, but we just need to figure out how, how legal will allow us to hold our elections. Other COCs have done this virtually, but we're just unsure about what that means for us.
Okay, that's a discussion that the committee can have with Metro Legal following up to this. So the other question that I have is, we also normally in June vote on officers for the council, so that those will continue. Where are we at with that?
We would like, the nominations committee has talked, and we think that it's something that maybe needs to go to the charter. We have a lot of feelings about how officers being there for 2 years instead of just one. In terms of just consistent leadership and institutional knowledge so that we can actually get some things done, because leadership has been rolling off every year and we just think that that is a lot.
Okay, so that's an issue for the charter committee. So that's
Paula?
fine.
Paula, hey,
Yes.
it's Susie. The other thing is that typically what has to happen is the election needs to occur so that you've got your new planning council members, and then the planning council is the body that elects the executive committee.
That is correct. So what has happened previously is the new officers are elected in June, so that July 1st in the new year, there are officers already elected. That's what we did the last 2 years. So the question that I have is, are we prepared to elect officers today?
No.
No. Okay. Then what needs to happen, I believe, and Derek, if you're on this call, you can correct me if I am wrong. Do we need to vote officially to extend the terms until we have the opportunity to vote on new officers, or do we just stay on until that vote happens?
I suggest that you have a motion to extend the terms due to the emergency circumstances so that you can complete those tasks. And then set the new deadline for when you intend to have the new positions filled.
Thank you.
My recommendation.
So,
could you tell me also, in terms of the voting situation, do you have any recommendations on that?
So, hey, Ingrid, let me stop you there, because the membership voting is different than what we're doing here, and we are really running up against a deadline. I would like for the nominating committee to have a chance to speak to Derek at a different time than right this minute to follow up on how that's going to be done. Okay. So did I hear someone say so moved?
I did. I withdraw that.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I withdrew it.
Oh, you withdrew it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to extend the officers' terms until we are able to vote on new officers due to the emergency situation with COVID?
Yes, I would make that motion. This is Ingrid.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Charlie seconded. All right, we need to have that vote, Abigail, and then we can see what's next.
Elena Boyer. Elena Boyer.
Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you. April Calvin. Yes. Beth Shin.
Yes.
Catherine Knoll.
Yes.
Charles Strobel.
Yes.
Don Diener.
Yes, and I'm logging off our meeting. Sorry, y'all.
Thank you. Freddie O'Connell.
Yes, and then I also have to go.
Ingrid McIntyre.
Yes.
Laura Bermudez.
Yes, and I'm going to have to drop in a minute as well.
Mark Overlock.
Yes.
Mary Catherine Rand.
Yes.
Michelle Hall.
Yes.
Norman Humber.
Yes.
Paula Foster.
Yes.
Ryan Ellis.
Yes.
Sandra Sepulveda. That's all.
Okay. Motion carries. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we are out of time. Several folks have had to drop off already. Unless there's something urgent that someone else needs to bring up. Yes, Charlie.
Yes. Mary Falls came to the meeting today, and I think we offered her an opportunity to give a last word a moment ago.
I think she dropped off the call. She's dropped off the call. That's my understanding at this point.
Paula, Yeah, I would like to say something. I want to start the comment with words matter, and I think that I would like to apologize on behalf of the Planning Council for any inappropriate comments that were made by the public, not by committee members. If we all meet each other with love, we'd be a lot better off. Also, going back to Charlie, I believe that when he keeps asking, do we matter? Sometimes when you say words matter, for example, maybe taking that word homelessness, this may need to be a motion for next month, but taking the word homelessness planning council, homelessness out of our planning council title will probably let people know we are the planning council for the continuum of care. But they put us in one sector. There's no longer a BOAD. So when emergency services are all pulled together to address a disaster, they may not think that we're part of that disaster. We're just a small sector because we choose to use the word homelessness. And maybe next month we can have a motion on dropping that word homelessness and just saying that we are the Continuum of Care Planning Council. Maybe we'll be brought to more tables as opposed to addressing the one thing that they may think is minute in the entire city when there's a disaster.
April, I love that thinking, and I do agree specifically about issuing the statement on the apology for inappropriate comments that may have been made by the public. However, I will also tell you that we cannot change the name of this body without a ordinance change in the city council. We were created by the city council, and that is our name. So there you go. All right. Does anyone else have any pressing information or business that needs to be brought up before we entertain a motion to dismiss? All right.
Move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
And we will all vote on that by logging off this call. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.